Number 8. Oscar Pistorius. In 2012, South African sprint runner Oscar Pistorius made history for being the first amputee to compete in Olympic track events. Nicknamed the Blade Runner, he was born without a fibula in both legs and underwent a double amputation below the knee at a young age. However, the athlete's swift rise to international stardom came crashing down just as quickly in early 2013, when his girlfriend, model Riva Steenkamp, was found shot to death at her home in Pretoria. Authorities quickly zeroed in on Pistorius, who claimed he shot Steenkamp through a locked bathroom door after mistaking her for an intruder. But investigators didn't buy his story, and he was charged with premeditated murder. Prosecutors accused Pistorius of deliberately shooting Steenkamp after she locked herself in the bathroom during an argument. He maintained his innocence throughout the trial and broke down in tears on the stand as he apologized to Steenkamp's family for what he claimed was an unintentional mistake. Not everyone was swayed by the disgraced athlete's waterworks, though, and some even alleged that he took acting lessons before the trial, which he denied. At one point, the defense attempted to argue that Pistorius suffered from an anxiety disorder that influenced his decisions on the night of the shooting. However, a team of court-appointed psychiatrists concluded that he didn't suffer from clinical anxiety. Pistorius was found not guilty of premeditated murder in 2014, but was convicted of the lesser charge of culpable homicide. He was later released from prison the following year on house arrest and probation. Unsatisfied with what seemed like a slap on the wrist, prosecutors fought the ruling, and in 2015, South Africa's top appeals court ruled that Pistorius was guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison, but prosecutors once again condemned the outcome for being too lenient and took the matter back to court. In 2017, his sentence was increased to 15 years. Pistorius appealed the sentence but was denied. As of 2023, he's eligible for parole, but he remains behind bars for the time being. Number 7. Kevin Ware. 29-year-old Taylor Pomaski was last seen alive in April of 2021 at the Harris County, Texas home she shared with her boyfriend, 41-year-old former NFL player Kevin Ware Jr. Witnesses later reported seeing the couple fighting violently that night during a house party. Ware quickly became a person of interest to investigators, who arrested him several months after Pomaski went missing for not attending his bail hearings in an unrelated felony drug and gun case. He was reportedly uncooperative when authorities tried to question him about his girlfriend's disappearance. Pomaski's family suspected Ware of being involved, and so did her ex-boyfriend Eric Zuliger, who told ABC 13 that Pomaski had reached out to him for help shortly before she went missing. Zuliger also said that Ware had taken away Pomaski's cell phone weeks before she vanished, and that she was only able to communicate via email. The last time he saw the young woman, she seemed thin and appeared to have facial injuries. In December of 2021, 8 months after Pomaski went missing, her suspected remains were discovered. Several months later, they were positively identified as Pomaski. Then in mid-2022, Ware was indicted on charges of murder and tampering with a corpse. Prosecutors remain tight-lipped about most of the details about what they believe happened, but court documents allege that Ware fatally cut, strangled, and bludgeoned the victim. If convicted, he could serve 15 years to life behind bars. Number 6. Aaron Hernandez. It would be impossible to briefly cover the entire rap sheet of former New England Patriots player Aaron Hernandez, but we'll go over the highlights. In 2014, he was charged in connection with a drive-by shooting that killed a pair of men in Boston 2 years earlier. He was also accused of shooting his friend, Alexander Bradley, during a night out in early 2013. Bradley, who was an alleged witness to the 2012 double homicide, survived and refused to cooperate with authorities. Hernandez was subsequently charged with witness intimidation. Later on in 2013, several months after the Bradley shooting, Hernandez's pal, Odin Lloyd, was found shot to death just a mile away from Hernandez's house. Suspicion immediately fell upon the disgraced football player, and within days he was charged with first-degree murder and was subsequently dropped from the Patriots. Hernandez was officially convicted of Lloyd's murder in 2015. His motive remains unclear, although speculation suggests that Lloyd, who was dating the sister of Hernandez's fiancée, had discovered his friend's bisexuality, causing Hernandez to fear being outed. Another theory points towards Hernandez being angry at Lloyd for talking to his enemies at a nightclub. Hernandez was acquitted on charges relating to the double homicide and Bradley shooting, but it didn't really mean much since the murder conviction automatically landed him a life sentence without parole. However, just days later, he was found dead in his prison cell after taking his own life. On the wall, there were drawings made in blood of an unfinished pyramid, the all-seeing eye, and the word Illuminati. The words John 3:16 were written on Hernandez's forehead in blood. He left behind 3 bizarre rambling notes to his lawyer, fiancé, and daughter. In them, he discussed entering a timeless realm. A post-mortem study of Hernandez's brain revealed that he was suffering from a degenerative brain disease called chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, which is often found in athletes who play high-impact sports. Researchers described it as the most severe case they'd ever seen, and it very well may have affected his destructive decision-making. Number 5. John Paul Sr. Dutch-American race car driver John Paul Sr. was a successful hedge fund manager with a Harvard degree before ever rising to fame in the world of motorsports during the 1960s and 70s. When he was unable to fund his new racing career on his own or through legitimate sponsors, he began trafficking drugs. In 1979, he was caught with over $10,000 cash and more than 1,500 pounds of marijuana. Paul pleaded guilty to a possession charge and was forced to pay a $32,000 fine as a result. He married 32-year-old Chalice Alfred Barnett the following year, but the marriage was short-lived. Barnett vanished off Key West in 1981, marking the first of 2 suspicious disappearances that Paul would be linked to. 2 years later, Paul was arrested for shooting Stephen Carson, a witness who'd been granted immunity in a federal drug case. Carson survived his injuries though, and Paul fled while out on bail. He was nabbed in Switzerland with a fraudulent passport 6 months later. After being extradited back to the US, Paul was convicted of racketeering and attempted first-degree murder, earning him 25 years behind bars. He unsuccessfully tried to escape prison in 1987 by spraying hot sauce and pine sol in a guard's face, who quickly recovered and forced Paul to surrender after firing 2 warning shots from his gun. Then in 2000, Paul's new partner, Colleen Wood, moved onto his boat, the Diamond Lady. She also vanished later that year, and Paul claimed she left on her own accord after a disagreement over money. In the 3 months following her disappearance, someone other than Colleen withdrew $38,000 from her bank account and used her credit cards. 2 women who were seen completing the transaction on surveillance footage claimed that a man had paid them a cut of the proceeds in exchange for pretending to be Colleen. Authorities have stated that they would like to question Paul about the case, but he vanished from Fort Lauderdale on the Diamond Lady in 2001, and they've been unable to track him down ever since. Number 4. Saleem Rasheed. Former NFL linebacker Saleem Rasheed played for the San Francisco 49ers and the Houston Texans between 2002 and 2006 before moving on to Canadian pro football. He worked as a high school teacher from 2009 to 2011, during which time he allegedly had inappropriate relations with 2 students. They were over the age of 18, but not legally able to consent due to a state law prohibiting intimacy between teachers and students. But before these illicit flings caught up with him, Rasheed was charged with food stamp fraud. He admitted to receiving over $5,000 in benefits while falsely claiming to be unemployed and was sentenced to 8 months in prison. The former pro athlete also pleaded guilty to falsely claiming he was married to a woman other than his wife on immigration forms. Federal records revealed that Rasheed married a woman named Hadam Benachu in Morocco in 2005. They moved to the US in 2006 and had 2 children in 2007 and 2009. In the meantime, Rasheed had 2 kids with another woman in 2006 and 2008 and married her despite not being legally divorced from Benachu. His misconduct as a teacher finally caught up with him in 2013 when he was sentenced to 3 years in prison for his inappropriate relations with students. Number 3. Ed Belfour. Hockey player Ed Belfour logged 484 wins throughout his career, ranking him as the 5th best NHL goaltender of all time. People called him Crazy Eddie, and he apparently lived up to the nickname both on and off the ice. One night in early 2000, a woman he was with at a Dallas hotel called security and said that she was scared by Belfour's drunken behavior. Security guards escorted the woman out of the hotel and confronted Belfour, who allegedly slammed one employee's head into a wall and put him in a headlock. Hotel employees sprayed him with mace, but the struggle continued until police arrived. The authorities later claimed that Belfour offered them $1 billion to release him without charges after being taken into custody. He ended up paying a $3,000 fine for resisting arrest and apologized to the police, the hockey community, and his fans for the way he acted. Then in 2007, Belfour was arrested again, this time for disorderly intoxication and resisting arrest. He was also apprehended in 2020 for third-degree criminal mischief and alcohol intoxication in a public place. According to a police report from the 2020 arrest, he damaged property at a hotel in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and was under the influence of alcohol to a point he was a danger to himself and others. He ended up pleading guilty to the public intoxication charge and was ordered to pay $219 in fines and court fees. Number 2. Steve Durbano. During the 1970s, Steve Durbano gained a reputation for being one of the fiercest hockey players in the NHL, which unfortunately got him suspended and kicked off teams more than once. Known by the nicknames Wild Man and Mental Case, the Canadian-born defenseman was also notorious for his crazy behavior off the ice, which became especially noticeable after his hockey career ended in 1979. Durbano reportedly blew his savings on partying and drugs, and in 1981 he was arrested at the Toronto International Airport with nearly 500 grams of cocaine in his possession. He was convicted of smuggling cocaine 2 years later and was sentenced to 7 years in prison. Around that time, Durbano admitted that he regularly used cocaine during his NHL career. Many speculated that he got involved in drug trafficking as a way to finance his habit, which by the time he went to prison, was costing him around $1,000 per week. He was released from prison after serving 2 years and managed to mostly stay out of trouble for the rest of the decade, minus a shoplifting charge he caught for stealing shirts. By the early 90s, Durbano was welfare dependent and barely making ends meet with his meager hockey pension of $300 per month. He started an escorting business as a way to pay the bills, but was arrested after trying to recruit an undercover cop into the trade. Durbano spent 3 more months behind bars. He then moved to Yellowknife, Canada, where he lived a somewhat calmer lifestyle than he was known for. However, he never stopped drinking, and eventually, all those years of abusing his body caught up with him. He ended up dying from liver cancer in 2002 at just 50 years old. Number 1. Bob Probert. Former Detroit Red Wings forward Bob Probert was already on thin ice with the NHL, no pun intended, when he was caught trying to smuggle drugs into Canada in 1989. By then, the 23-year-old had been to rehab for his drinking 5 times and saw disciplinary measures that banned him from 44 of the most recent season's games. He'd also been arrested several times for multiple reasons, including for driving while impaired and assaulting a police officer. Probert approached the border via the Detroit-Windsor Tunnel in a borrowed car with 3 passengers at around 5:15 a.m. After discovering that the vehicle was littered with empty beer cans and a liquor bottle, U.S. Customs agents searched the suspects and found a ½ ounce of cocaine hidden in Probert's underwear, along with paraphernalia in his pocket. Probert was consequently charged with importing cocaine into the U.S., and he quickly became the first player in NHL history to be expelled for involvement with drugs. Until that point, only 3 other players had been kicked out of the organization, and they were booted for gambling. The NHL had given Probert numerous opportunities to clean up his act, but there's only so much someone can do to help a person who has no apparent desire to improve their life. In the words of former Red Wing coach Jacques Demers, who spoke with the New York Times shortly after Probert's expulsion, Bob Probert could have been 10 years from now a multi-millionaire and had it all, but it's not going to be, and I have no control over that. Which of these professional athletes surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye!